have you heard the one where I spun out of control? Basically, vertigo. I don't know if any of you have experienced vertigo, but it is the most horrendous feeling, like you are totally out of control. So this is my story about getting vertigo a few times actually, and how it began, and then how I healed myself through it. So there is some gems in here if you listen to it, and maybe these are things that could help you out of vertigo in the future for you. So I guess I was, late 30s, maybe even 40. But I had already gone through menopause. I was through the end of it because I went through early menopause due to like low ovarian function. And I don't know if I was stressed, but I'm going to go with yeah, probably. So my stress level was high. I know that at this moment in my time, in my life, having menopause or going through menopause, my mineral count, like magnesium, most of my minerals, the electrolytes, the sodium, all of that was probably very shot. So I was doing Pilates. I went to a place, it was, it wasn't the greatest place in New Jersey, but I was doing it to just maintain. And I remember it was like this posh little place in like Red Bank, New Jersey. And it was fine. It was a group class, and it was reformer, which is like moving back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I never had problems with dizziness. I never had problems with anything like passing out, anything. I really, kept to the infertile madness, and that was just about really what my issues were. So we were doing this reformer class, and they were having us do like stuff that's not really Pilates. So they were having us like lay on our sides and do it. And so I remember I was on my right side, and I had this cough, like a very deep cough, to where it felt like my insides were coughing, not just me. Like my heart skipped, my lungs kind of went papa. Everything kind of went boom. And I didn't think much of it. And we're like doing the thing, and then we go back onto the back to do reformer like we should. And things were like heating up and didn't feel right. And then I started to spin. So in vertigo, things really maneuver around you as if you are on like the tilt-a-whirl. So the earth seems like it is moving and moving and moving while you're staying still. And so I sit up, of course, making it worse. And I don't know what vertigo is. I'd never had it before. I didn't even talk to anybody about it. I didn't really understand it too much. None of my clients really had it. I didn't really deal with it. I thought I was stroking out. I thought I was having a stroke. So they stop the class. They call, an ambulance. I am still spinning. Now I'm throwing up. I am shaking. Things are going numb. It's, probably a lot of stress. So they take me in an ambulance. I am going to a hospital closer to where I lived. So it was a bit of a drive. And I remember being this was maybe the second time I was in an ambulance. The first time was when my, ovaries exploded. Catch that story, that was a good one. This one, I was older and with a family. And I remember being in that ambulance, again, thinking I was having a stroke, and being like, oh my goodness, this could be A, the end, or B, at least the end of the life that I know. So there was this mourning period within this ride. Well, we get to the hospital. My husband meets me there. They do some tests. They do some scans. I can't quite recall because I'm still spinning. And they come in and they're like, all right, good news. We figured it out. You've got vertigo. And I'm like, no, I don't have vertigo. the world is, spinning and I'm like having a problem here. And they're like, no, actually that is vertigo. And I'm like, oh, so I have vertigo. Okay. Why do I have vertigo? Oh, you just, the crystals probably got, mixed up and you just, you got vertigo and here are the 3 drugs. So you have one that keeps you from being nauseous because I was throwing up, one that keeps you from being dizzy, and I think one to relax your nerves. So you get 3, a combo. And I've had I've had motion sickness throughout my life due to, you'll see why, but this was intense. So I didn't know what to do, and I just trusted that they knew what vertigo was, and here you go. And I was miserable, miserable. And when I tell you that I spun for 3 days, I spun for 3 days while I was laying down, when I was standing up, walking, anything. But little did I know that staying still and in that dark room and taking that medication actually compounded the issue. So I learned a lot as I went through. So as soon as I got out of the spins, we had to go to like a specialist for this, and they taught me the Eppley maneuver. So the Eppley maneuver is where you can Google it, but you do a little something, you do a little something, and you sit up, and then everything is supposed to kind of get back into place. It's a way that if you look at the ear and the structure of the ear, it's like a spiral. So the idea is that you are doing these head maneuvers so the crystals that may have gotten off, that have gotten your equilibrium off, go back into the housing or the home in which they need to be in. So we did that. I sat up immediately from that, and the spinning did stop. I did notice that that's when the floaters in the eyes began. Just the left eye. And then that was kind of then my go-to tool. But I was like, guys, nobody really cares that this is happening, and you really don't have an idea of why. So then I went on my own journey. I went to a cardiologist. Heart was fine. I went to a physical therapist for balance. And, they're doing a lot of eye tracking. They're doing a lot of balancing exercises. And then she was like, there's no way you were spinning for 3 days. You thought you were spinning for 3 days, but vertigo doesn't usually last that long. I'm like, it lasted that long. So it was quite a severe case for me. And then what would be residuals, I like to call my wah-wahs. So it would be this feeling of just not totally correct, not on, like the earth below me was shifting and moving and just wasn't feeling right. And then I'd get the spins here and there. I'd probably say every 6 months, and it would just knock you out. So I always like to pride myself as like, when I am sick, I push through it. Because my husband makes fun of me. He's like, oh, so you're not sick? I'm like, nope, I'm not sick. And I just, keep about like what I need to do. When you get a stomach bug, it's a little harder. But vertigo, you ain't doing nothing. You're not doing anything. So as I grew in the knowledge of like vertigo, I started to do a little bit more research. The minerals and everything happened to make it an issue, but there was something deeper. There was something more involved. So I remember, I guess it was like a couple years later, I was doing some exercises and I was actually stretching with a ball, and I was overstretching, and I felt like a click, 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 like almost like a tearing or a separation. And then I got on an inversion table right after that. So it's like double whammy. What I come to find out is that like it was nerve issues. Like I had vagus nerve issues from probably my whole childhood life, from all the toxins, all the different food sensitivities that I had. Those came from the toxic load that I had, and then also the emotional and spiritual components that like really kind of harvested in the gut and the uterus area. So the vagus nerve, which is fascinating, goes from your gut. It's like telling you whether or not you're safe, what you're eating is safe. It's telling you about your survival. And it goes through the heart, through the lung, up this area into the jaw and the face and the ear. And your whole body is really in tune with this vagus nerve. So I pull on it, I yank on it, and it does a little something, something, and I go upside down. And my body's like, what are you doing? Boom, started spinning again. So this, I had a good, like, long run without the spins, and then I really screwed myself with that one. And so I did the Eberle maneuver because I knew, oh, this is my left side. That's the thing about the Eberle maneuver. You've got to know what side to work with, because usually the vertigo is not affecting both ears or both sides. It's affecting one or the other. Now, what I started to realize is like, okay, this is vagus nerve. And my vagus nerve is pretty jacked up, and it probably has been. And the reason why I spun the first time is the vagus nerve going through the heart probably tricked it or got off, or, it started with that. So for me, I started to put the puzzle pieces together that, okay, yeah, the crystals may be getting off, but why? And that's the cause and effect, and I'm always going back to the causation. And so I did some more research, and things were coming and going with getting some knowledge. And it wasn't until I moved. And when I moved to Florida, I really do believe that when you come into healing, it is about timing a lot of the times. And I lived a life where, there was testing constantly be going on. I had a thermography while I was in New Jersey, and they did see something going on, and it was like this red infection draining. And they're like, oh, it's probably just your sinuses. Don't worry about it. So I didn't worry about it. And then once we moved to Florida, I, started to get the people in my life to help heal. I got another thermography. And this time when they looked, they're like, I don't like that. It's 5 years later. Why is it still there? Why do we still have that red? And they're like, we think this may be a cavitation. And I'm like, well, being in the health and wellness, I've been tested for a cavitation. And it never came up. It never came up. Never came up because it wasn't time to heal. So once I found, this wonderful holistic biological dentist, I can't say enough about a biological dentist. If you're going to go to a dentist and you've got a lot of mess going on, and my teeth were fine. I've never really had a lot of cavities. I don't have bad teeth. But when I was a teenager, had my wisdom teeth pulled. And when your wisdom teeth are pulled, sometimes, a lot of the time, an infection can harbor in that hole. And then it just heals. And now you have an infection in your jaw. So they were able to see through a cone beam scan and through the thermography the most prominent area of like swelling, and then there was also an infection within the sinus, was probably due to a cavitation. And I decided that this is what I'm going to do. We're going to have this removed. Well, you can't remove a cavitation, but you can remove the infection within the jaw. And we made the decision through the cone beam scan, using a biological dentist. They have things that most dentists don't have or use. So they use ozone, they use your own plasma. So they're taking your blood, spinning it around, and then they're packing the hole that they've newly made, a new hole that they're going to pack with your plasma. They use a lot of times Procaine, which is like an anesthetic. for scarring, for nerves damage, so that it will start to heal a little bit faster. And procaine is something that a lot of holistic people use for scarring, because scarring is a big deal within the emotional and spiritual world, actually. Physical scars and emotional scars. But, and then, they don't do fluoride. So those are going to be some things that you're going to look for. They're not going to be into root canals either. So look for that in a biological dentist. So once we did that surgery, this infection, and you can even see I still have some lingering inflammation, which I know is my lymphatic system. My lymphatic system has always been a little slow due to having a couple of gene mutations like the MTHFR. And so we got that removed, got another thermography, and saw that was gone. The infection, that line of redness, that heat that was exuding was gone. And getting that taken care of on the left side, I started doing the research on cavitations and the infections of cavitations and how it affects your thyroid, how it affects your breast tissue, and how it affects things like cancer in your future. So it's important. I then started to backtrack and say, okay, left side, vagus nerve, problem. Left side, sinuses, pain, problem. Floaters in the left eye only. This is a problem. And I could see it in my face, a difference in that. So researching also how the nerves are affected by toxins and heavy metals, I started to do some discovery on upper cervical chiropractors. So this is not your typical chiropractor. So it's not the crack, it's not even the gun. An upper cervical chiropractor is literally working on just your cervical spine, and it does trickle down to help with the parts of your spine that may be damaged. But when you're thinking about the atlas and the axis right underneath your skull, it can be off this way, it could be off this way, it could be off in a twist, so many ways. And that is affecting your cranial nerves. So cranial nerves are amazing. Like, spiritually speaking, they are something else. And I would do some research of your own on these cranial nerves, because the cranial nerves are what make us human a lot of the time. It gives us our sense of smell, how we see the world, how our faces are moving, our taste, our hearing, everything through here, our vagus nerve, which tells us we're safe. So these cranial nerves are our little piece of human magic that God has granted us with. And there's 12 of them. And if you look up the pineal or the pineal, however you want to say it, and how these things are connected to our spirits and our the way we move about the world, it can blow your mind. So, again, I never heard of upper cervical chiropractic until I moved, because I wasn't ready, I guess. And so going to these upper cervical chiropractors, they put you down and it looks like you're going to get your head chopped off, but they literally just do a little boop. It's very, very light. They do the another scan to kind of see where you're off, and they figure out how to do it. And it's very passive, and they do just a little boop. They do a little boop. And at first I was like, this is ridiculous. But now, being clear of vertigo due to getting the cavitation removed, due to being consistent on my upper cervical chiropractic care, I now know when I'm off and when I'm on. So I, yes, had to heal my gut as well. Taking each day to test God, what is it that I'm supposed to be eating each and every day? Started to heal. I started to detox some heavy metals, because the heavy metals, the toxic load has an affinity for those cranial nerves, and then the cranial nerves can get off, and then you can lose your smell, you can lose your sight, you can lose your balance. So I worked on those things. I took out caffeine because it was giving me the wah-wahs. And now, like when I feel a little off, I know I need an adjustment, or I know I need an adjustment in what I'm putting into my body, because that spirit of vertigo loves to haunt me. And I cast it out quite often, but I have now found that really looking into your teeth, root canals, your cavitations from wisdom teeth or other teeth that have been pulled is a great start. Getting thermography is another great start. And then I can't say enough about the upper cervical chiropractic care. So you can definitely look at, I'll put a link on in the comments about like how to search for an upper cervical chiropractor in your area. But that's the way to go. That worked for me. And you can always reach out to me if you have any questions about my journey. But I will stand by this 100% that this worked for me. And I tried a lot of other things, meditation, stress relief. Sometimes it's structural. It's structural, you know, and sometimes we can't see it until we're ready. So I wish everybody luck out there. And that's my story.